Brock Lesnar in the driving seat. Situation with Seth Rollins now, Matt. I mean, how risque is this? How likely is it that that's going to become problematic, or do you think that they're just playing a very, very safe bet with Seth, and that there's nothing really too much to worry about?
He's definitely a passionate guy, Seth. He's definitely someone you'd always want to back. He's going to put the effort in. He's going to want to make it there. But unfortunately, he does have this history of injuries that make him, if you look at it on paper, kind of a liability. And it's a shame, because that's the guy I want to see. I want to see him there at the main event. I mean, sadly, unfortunately, there's no Roman. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like seeing Roman in the main event, but you've got to look to someone else now. You've got to see the company being built around the guy. And Brock Lesnar, he is the man. He's had that title, carried it with authority, and it's just he's not. I struggle to find the right phrase. I don't want to say a company guy, because he's definitely showed up at the events that they needed to. But it's almost like Brock doesn't wrestle because he loves it. It's not like a passion. It's not like it is for Seth. Seth would probably wrestle in WrestleMania for free, just to be in that spot. So that's the kind of guy I want to see make it there.
Yeah, at this point, I can't see. I mean, I still have reservations here, Matt. As crazy as it sounds, I just, we come out of last year and Brock's still holding the belt. Do you even think that Seth Rollins, even on his best day, in WWE's eyes, is the guy to finally sort of slay this whole thing once and for all? Or do you just think that there's no confidence at the minute with some of the guys, and that there's still so much uncertainty? Because with Seth Rollins, it's not like they've done a Roman build with him. They've had him lose a lot during the 2018 against some really odd opponents in times, especially if you go back to that World Cup thing. I mean, what was going on there? And it's not like they've done an extrally sort of careful job at methodically building this guy properly. It does worry me, Matt, that all of a sudden out of the blue he wins the Royal Rumble, but it's almost like a safe bet with him, and that's the only reason he's getting it. As far as momentum goes, Matt, I mean, I said they really need to do some incredible stuff with him. This injury does not help that, Matt. I fear for him going forward. I don't know how passionate the fans can really be with him at the minute, but not having him on TV does really have a difficult thing for him, I feel, going forward. And even the stuff with Dean Ambrose, it's like Dean Ambrose is coming off more cooler, especially with his situation at the moment with his contract. It's like all of a sudden you can get over by sort of stating you're going to be going, and it's like Dean all of a sudden has been getting in the more cooler lines than what Seth is. And unfortunately, I just think Seth Rollins as a babyface sometimes doesn't always grip me as much as perhaps what I think he should, and he's not as edgy as I kind of want him. It sort of falls into that Randy category sometimes, but yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation for WWE, because obviously they don't know what they're doing. But as far as a plan B goes, I mean, in my opinion, Matt, Bobby Lashley is not a plan B. He's, how on earth can Bobby Lashley be plan B? It surely should be Finn Balor over Bobby Lashley at the moment. So I don't know why people think that. Maybe because of the way they look, probably the MMA stuff. But come on, there's a big difference between Brock and Bobby at the moment in terms of the way they're booked. So that would not be a great idea. It's sort of, I don't want to say, my idea before, but I really liked the idea of him and Drew, but they obviously don't see him at the moment as the man. But that would have been something special for me, especially if you would have left Drew as the heel going into it. And I always fancied him during the match to sort of get over with the fans when he sees toughness go through. But we'll have to see, Matt. I mean, hopefully things work out for Seth Rollins, and he manages to get a wave of momentum. But to be honest with you, at this point, Matt, I think the only person with all the momentum is Becky Lynch. I mean, she is the one, and I would say definitely that match will go on. It should go on last, because Seth Rollins, no matter how much he may get at the end of it towards WrestleMania, I just don't see him building as much momentum as what Becky will do in her sort of run up to the match. What about you, Matt? Do you think he could turn it around?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, but that's where it's interesting, because the WrestleMania main event is up in the air. I mean, I know you said that Bobby Lashley isn't a great plan B, but he doesn't necessarily have the main event. It could be Ronda, Charlotte and Becky that end up being the main event.
Yeah.
So as long as that possibility is there, it's not really too much of a threat, whether like Brock has to fight Bobby or Brock has to fight Seth, we can leave that. I mean, whether Seth's the main event, was probably dependent on what level of fitness he achieves come WrestleMania. But the good thing I will go back to Seth is like, he might not be able to dominate Brock or be even believable to dominate Brock, but that's the great thing about professional wrestling, that you can predetermine the outcome. You can book something. I mean, even when Roman took the title for Brock, it wasn't clean, was it? Brock still carried that kind of momentum with him because he was distracted. So it's almost like WWE have created a real legitimate beast. There's no way to really cleanly take every bit of momentum that Brock's carried on his shoulders for the last few years. Whoever beats him, people are going to want to see a rematch at some point, because there's always going to be that possibility that it was just a fluke. I mean, dream scenario booking, they know Dean's probably on the way out, so if he could do another turn and maybe help Seth, people probably would eat that up, maybe.
Yeah, they would. Going out on a bit of a crazy question here to you, Matt, but just speaking purely miles ahead of ourselves here, let's just play devil's advocate a little bit. If Brock did win again or retains the title or whatever it takes, at that point, Matt, I mean, if he wins again, do you just sort of throw your hands up and say no one is going to ever beat him? Because, I mean, I thought last year was a pure definite, and, sort of what WWE had spent years trying to sort out, and they still didn't do it. And I know it finally did happen, but let's face it, WrestleMania is the place to do it. A very odd situation. Brock has not even full-time commitment contracts. I mean, they're not even like the contracts he used to sign, and they were part-time, but now he's signing sort of very short-term deals, like 2-3 months. That's it. They didn't even have any Raw appearances booked in. They've had to sort that out. Brock's charging them all kinds of crazy money at the minute, and the reason he's doing that is because WWE put themselves in that situation. I mean, they didn't have to go with Brock being the guy that, when they knew Roman was unfortunately going to be out, they didn't have to go to Brock if they didn't want to. They could have just had Brock turn. I thought Brock would be at WrestleMania, but I didn't think they would just go, right, let's just bring him back and, you can come work for us and we'll pay you millions of pounds to do it as well. And, Brock just must be smiling, mustn't he, Matt, every time that phone goes? I mean, he must be like, here we go again. This is fantastic.
I mean, like you said, if he wins again, it does kind of make you totally think, there's no one left that can challenge him. But at the same time, that could be a tremendous gamble for WWE. I mean, I keep bringing the guy up. He's not even there, Roman, though. They wanted for years and years fans to get behind him, to back him, to be the guy. If Seth was to lose and there was no other challengers, if Roman can make his way back into that ring, that place, it could be one of the biggest pops in wrestling history when he comes back, and if he is able to challenge Brock and get that title, that would be an incredible moment. Roman
Brock 3, who knows? Matt's just pointed it out. You never know. Stranger things have happened, so we will see on that count. Okay, other news now, Matt, coming out, of course, now today that was announced that a lot of emails coming in, a lot of angry emails actually, and I will give my point of view on this, which might not be overly popular, but Of course, Matt, D-Generation X been confirmed as going to be going into this year's WWE Hall of Fame, and we haven't really heard much about it. It's almost like there's, picking at straws here. And of course, the poster, Matt, it does include China. She is there, and that's what a lot of our listeners have been emailing in. And I've been reading, all over the internet as we've been talking on this podcast. I've been going on Facebook and looking on their page and seeing some of the comments. And there's a lot of angry fans out there that, they think this is just a bit of an underhanded move by WWE to sort of put China in, but it's sort of disguised behind D-Generation X. But I want to say, this is what I'm going to say about it, Matt, really. And I get everybody's anger, and that's fine to be that way. We always say that on this podcast. You're entitled to feel the way you feel. We know we have passionate listeners and fans. We know that. We read these emails and that's your point of view. But from my... I just want to say my point of view on this. For me, Matt, I don't see this as inducting China. I don't, and so I don't really, if I'm being honest with you, it doesn't bother me because, quite frankly, it's if you're putting DX in, then you're putting DX in. It's not. I know that they might say, well, this is our way of putting China in. For me, I don't think it is. I just think they're just doing the group thing. I'm sure that if the video clips that you'll see, they just have China in it, yeah, but it'll probably be the goofy stuff that Shawn Michaels was doing, when she had the breast implants and goofing around, doing that kind of thing. It's not really China, the China that really, if you want to talk about who's somebody that did really elevate stuff for the women, you probably go to her as a major person that female or male, definitely made a huge impact when she started to wrestle, Matt, against the guys. And it's funny, isn't it, Matt, because you can go back, and I don't know if this is the same for you, Matt, but I went back a few days ago on some Attitude matches, and she was facing like Bob Holly. And it's weird because when I see it, I don't even have to double take. I'm just like, it's China. She wrestles guys. There's no like, oh, that's a woman and that's a man. You just don't think of it like that. She becomes so good that you just didn't, sort of ever think it was a male and a female. And that's how good she was. And obviously, they're not putting her in for. They're not going to show those clips. For me, that's China, that's the Hall of Fame, that's what you would do. Quite frankly, we've seen Trish Stratus in there, we've seen Lita, we've seen Beth Phoenix. If you're going to put China in, you're going to put just her in my opinion. I think the whole DX thing, if that's WWE's way of doing it, and they want to feel like they can get off the hook, for me, I don't think that's putting China in. That's just my opinion. I really don't. But I'm not upset about it either, because I just see this as like they're putting DX in. I don't see this as them putting China in because, like I say, I think that was very early on in her career. She'd been with Hunter Hearst Helmsley as a bodyguard, and during 97, 98, she was doing the DX thing. But, in terms of wrestling and all that sort of stuff, she sort of come out of that when she was away from DX, more or less. So for me, I'm not really as upset as everybody else is, because I just don't see this as I don't really see this as a solo thing. It would be like putting Bret Hart in with the Hart Foundation before you, and sort of missing what Bret done after. Even though the Hart Foundation were absolutely fantastic, it's like putting the Rockers in instead of Shawn Michaels. It's just how it is. But let's be honest here, Matt. If we're talking about the Hall of Fame, the standard in the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, is not exactly sort of tremendous anyway. So, we've got Donald Trump in it. We've got Hulk Hogan in and out of it. We've got Sunny, who she was selling the bloody ring and all the rest of it. So, I mean, there are a lot of problems with this Hall of Fame anyway. Personally, it would have been much nicer for someone like China, when she was still around, to have got this acknowledgement personally. So I'm sure for her family, possibly this is a big thing. I doubt it, being that he is just DX. And I think if they